welcome back to Total Expression. I am your girl Paulette, and I am so delighted that you allow me to share with you once again, and that you will enjoy this music interlude by Kirk Whalum. And I do not own the rights to his music, so as you enjoy his music and this story, please leave me your feedback and your comments. Also, you can DM me on my IG, Paulette.TotalExpressions, as well as comments section below. If you haven't subscribed yet, why don't you take a moment to do that now? Why wait till the end? Just go ahead, do that right now. Okay, so as we are still in the story session, the interview with Celena's debut, hopefully you already watched part 1 and part 2. Of course, in part 1, we got introduced to the main characters. In part 2, the interview began and we got a little bit tidbit into the life of Michaela. And now in part 3, we're actually diving more into Michaela's life, into her childhood, that allows her to really express and share what shaped and how she got into where she is today. Of course, we're going to have 2 more segments. We'll have part 4 and we'll wrap it up in part 5. So because of timing, we didn't want to give you a long drag out story. So that's why we cut it down in bites. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The interview, Celena's debut, part 3. Enjoy. The last time I saw my mom was the night before she disappeared, when we sat at the dining table. She looked so thin and frail, which made me mad, even to this day, because it was obvious she was ill. Yet my dad didn't seem to care. The tone in Michaela's voice made it apparent her anger was still prevalent. Why didn't you ask her if something was wrong while she was around, or to your dad when she left? Celena curiously asked her guest. You know what? I'm not sure why I didn't say anything to her. However, my dad started getting more and more aggressive and short-tempered as the days went by after she disappeared. So I was afraid to say anything to him. Things became weird between him and I right before my 17th birthday, when I woke up one night and he was standing over my bed. I got so scared I stayed up all night, Michaela told them. Gasping at what she heard, Celena quickly asked, "Oh my God, did he touch you inappropriately?" Michaela answered, "No. But looking back at it now, I think it was due to how he looked at me more than anything else." Michaela took a deep breath as she remembered all that transpired during her early days of her life. Celena used Michaela's pause to take a break. Doug, her husband, expressed how proud he was of her for opening up as she walked by and squeezed his hand. Using the time to visit the restroom, Michaela washed her hands, looked into the mirror to reassure herself she was doing the right thing. Returning back to her seat, the sound technician checked her microphone before she sat down. Celena began speaking directly to the camera. Welcome back. And for those of you who are just tuning in, we are sitting with Michaela Collinson, the Chief Biomedical Engineer, who is the winner of the Woman of the Year Award. Before the break, our guest was sharing about her early days, about the early days of her life that helped shape the future biomedical engineer. Michaela, please continue. With the attention shifting over to her, the engineer continued her story. After seeing my dad standing over my bed, I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but I was literally scared to sleep. Without thinking, the following night I waited an hour after he went into his room and closed his door before I took my blanket and his car keys to sleep in the car. As I was about to walk out the door, I grabbed the battery clock from the side table and set it to alarm for 5:15. Once the clock alarmed, I ran back in the house and in my bed because I knew he woke up at 6:15 like clockwork, and I figured it would give me an additional hour to sleep before he started banging on the door to complain about something. This went on for about 6 months, and I thought I was being careful with such a good routine. Selena's mind kept wondering how brave her guest must have been to sleep in the car. Posing the question, the interviewer asked, weren't you scared to be outside by yourself late at night? Surely it wasn't safe. Smiling slightly, Michaela responded, where we lived, it was pretty safe back then. As a matter of fact, most of our neighbors didn't even lock their doors. Wow, how different time was back then. I remembered after getting my part-time job, I had a routine. I would go to school, go to work, come home, make dinner for me and my dad while I do my homework. Everything was timed so that I would take a shower while he watched TV and drink his beer. I typically waited in my room until I hear him stumble up the stairs and close his door. After some time, I was off to the car again. What I didn't realize that I wasn't as careful as I thought, because one of our neighbors saw me going into the car for a week straight each night. So she decided to call Child Protective Services on my bed. Her rationale was I must have been escaping something horrible to sleep in the car. Of course, neither my dad nor I knew about it until the social worker decided to park outside of our house. And of course, she caught me leaving and climbing into the back of the car with my blanket. Drawing her own conclusion that my dad must have done something to me, she contacted him at work. You can imagine how shocked he was to learn that I've not been in my room all this time. He swore that when he goes to bed, I'm in the house and in my room because he can hear me moving around. The social worker apparently inquired if he actually checked that I was there. And his response to her was, she goes to bed before me, so why do I need to check? Stopping for a moment, she gave Celena a chance to absorb what she just heard. The story was becoming more intriguing for the reporter, who no longer looked at the questions on the card. I have to admit what you told us so far is very intriguing. Did they charge your dad with child neglect or anything? Finding the courage deep within, Michaela continued. No, the social worker surmised that if he was going into my room, he would have noticed I wasn't there. Celena asked her next question based on the guest's revelation. So, they were able to clear his name and close the case, right? Smirking to herself, Michaela responded, well, you would think so. But of course, old habits die hard. And I was so used to sleeping in my car that I carried on doing it. Sadly, my nosy neighbor called them again And a new caseworker was assigned who went to his job to interview his boss, co-workers, and then him while I was at school. When I arrived home later in the day, he was drunk, furious, and started screaming how much he hated me, how I made his life a living hell, and how he wished I wasn't born the moment I walked into the house. Of course, I was shocked that his car was there, so his words took me by surprise and ripped straight through my heart and my soul, especially since my mom wasn't there to stand up for me. I think that made it hurt even more. I tried telling myself he didn't mean it, and he was only saying these things because he was drunk. However, I didn't know about the social worker at the time. I sat in the living room crying the entire night, and before I knew it, I had to get ready for school. As I was heading to my room, he came out of his and stood at the top of the steps. He looked at me, and in a stern voice he said, "You slept in the car again?" I quickly told him no, I fell asleep on the sofa, even though I never actually slept. It was as though he didn't hear me, because he kept rambling about being tired of people thinking he's a monster. As I reached the top of the steps and I put my hand on my doorknob, I heard him say he couldn't do it anymore, so I need to find somewhere else to live. With that, he turned, walked back into his room, and closed his door. I thought I misunderstood what he said, but I didn't. She took a deep breath while trying very hard to hold back the tears. Celena felt the pain as she listened to Michaela's recollection of her troubled childhood, and it made her appreciate her parents even more. Using the opportunity to speak compassionately, she asked, "Oh, wow. I'm so sorry that he spoke that way to you. I'm sure he didn't mean it, and you were able to make up in the end. Am I correct?" Michaela would have given anything to make the outcome as positive as her interviewer outlined. However, that was not the case. Expressing the truth about what transpired after that evening was a weight off her shoulders. I only wished that was the case. I too thought it was out of anger that he spoke, and he would have felt better when I got home from work. With a heavy heart, I went to school and work, and because I was more determined than ever to get the best out of school, I focused as best as I could. This was my first year in high school, therefore it was very important for me to graduate. Deep down, I was thinking, if I could only get my diploma, maybe he'd be proud of me, and maybe my mom would finally come back home. It might have been a childish thought, but that was my thinking back then. After work, I rushed home, cooked dinner, and I waited for him to come back so we could sit down and have a long conversation about what I thought I heard and why I anger him so much. Michaela took a long pause to collect her emotions. The story was compelling to everyone listening. They were approaching the end of the allotted time for shooting the interview. Announcing that they were going to take a break, the reporter asked the couple if they were okay to carry on a little longer before she speaks to her producer. Even though revealing her story had a positive effect on her, they had other They had prior arrangements for later that evening. Michaela offered to give her at least 1 more hour before they have to leave. Taking what she could get, Celena rushed over to her producer to extend the crew and the audience for another hour. Resuming taping, Celena posed the next question. Michaela, I'm curious about the outcome of your discussion with your father. What happened when he came home? The question forced the suppressed tears to stream down her face. Thankful for her waterproof makeup, she dabbed her face with the tissue Celena discreetly gave her and willed herself to answer the question. Sadly, Celena, the conversation never happened because he didn't come home. She spoke so softly it was almost as if she was whispering. Celena decided to give the emotional woman time to collect herself and stopped for a quick break. Michaela stood up, and as soon as the producer yelled cut, so the sound technician could switch off her microphone and give her well-deserved privacy. Michaela's husband, Doug, who was sitting a few steps away from the stage, understood how hard it was for his wife to open up into her story. He gave her a big hug and whispered, "I'm proud of you, and I'm sure you're not only helping yourself, but thousands of people as well." With a sigh of relief, she responded, "Thanks, babe. I didn't realize it would have still hurt as much as it does." Despite her feelings, she was able to gather her composure and walk back to the chair. Microphone switched back on. The interview resumed. "Michaela, are you ready to continue?" Celena asked her guest in an effort to show her audience she had compassion. Deep inside, Michaela felt a little embarrassed for breaking down in front of the audience and the crew, so her new intention was to keep her emotions in place as they continued for another 50 minutes. "I'm so sorry for the tears, but yes, I'm good now. Thank you," Michaela replied in a subdued tone. "You are reliving your life story, so a few tears are absolutely understandable. Rest assured, no one is judging you for feeling emotional after what you've gone through," Celena told her before giving a thumbs up to the crew. She resumed with her questions, but first she wanted to welcome back her audience, both on camera as well as in the studio. And so she faced the camera and began speaking. "Welcome back to This Is Your Day with our special guest, Michaela, who, before the break, was still telling us about the time when she waited for her father and he did not come home for dinner. Michaela, are you able to share with us what happened to your father?" And this is where we are going to take a pause. I know you are all dying to know what happened to her dad, so we will pick that up in part 4. Again, thank you for allowing me to share the interview Celena's debut, part 3 with you. I hope you enjoyed the music interlude by Kirk Whalum, and I hope you are staying safe as usual, masking up, washing your hands, and social distancing. We are moving into the holiday season, so please be careful, make your decisions wisely, stay away from crowded malls, as well as crowded family gathering. Once again, thank you. And if you are in Georgia, don't forget, runoff season is here. Yes, there are 2 congressional seats opened for re-election, so please, 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 in the words of, our other, please go out and vote. We need you. We need your vote. We need for the next 4 years of our lives. It's going to depend on you. Each and every vote count. I will be voting. So I hope you guys follow suit. And once again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to do that now. And until next time, this is Paulette. You are watching Total Expressions with the interview, Celena's Debut, Part 3. Take care.